In the olfactory mucosa, we have several types of receptors. And of course, we have several odorants. Now, each particular olfactory receptor has one specific odorant receptor. Now, this particular receptor has a specific odorant receptor. There's an odorant receptor that is specific to it. This other one has its own. This one has its own. And then this one also has its own. This one has its own. So you can see that each receptor has a specific odorant receptor. And this odorant receptor is actually peculiar to this receptor. And of course, we have multiple odorants. Now, these multiple odorants have a tendency of binding either to a particular receptor. This one can actually bind, this can actually bind to this and can also bind to this. And then this one can bind to this, can bind to this, and can bind to this. This one may have a tendency of binding to just this one alone. Whereas this one can bind to this, can bind to this, and can bind to this. So it is important to know that each receptor has a specific odorant receptor that is peculiar to this receptor. And then we have multiple odorants that have the tendency of binding to a specific receptor or can as well bind to multiple receptors. Now, it is important to know that when an odoriferous substance or molecule reaches the nasal cavity, it goes down to the mucous membrane. Now, in the mucous membrane, we have some molecules or proteins that are called odorant binding proteins. These odorant binding proteins are capable of picking these odoriferous molecules, and then it takes them down. It takes it down to the receptors. The receptors that are present in the olfactory receptors, right? Now, this receptor is known as odorant receptor. It is known as odorant receptor. So, the odorant binding protein carries the odoriferous molecules to this receptor, the odorant receptor, which will result in the activation of the olfactory receptors. And once that happens, it results in the generation of action potential. But first of all, it will result in the generation of receptor potential, which will result in the generation of action potential. First of all, it will result in the generation of a receptor potential, which, once it reaches a particular threshold, will result in the activation, in the generation of action potential. The action potential, which is actually an electrical impulse, will now be transmitted along the olfactory nerve, which will go down the olfactory tract and then, of course, end in the olfactory cortex. Now, let us show how this process occurs on the board. Now, let's buttress the sensory transduction mechanism on the board. Now, let's say this is our receptor, and of course, our receptor contains what we call the odorant receptor, which is a G protein coupled receptor. This is a G protein coupled receptor. When an odoriferous molecule binds with this receptor, it actually activates the receptor. When the receptor is activated, it displaces what we call GDP. It displaces GDP and then what we call GTP. Binds with the receptor and activates this receptor. When GTP activates the receptor, it results in the activation of the alpha subunits of this protein. Now, this protein has an alpha subunit, a beta subunit, and a gamma subunit. Now, when GTP activates this receptor, the alpha subunit is activated. And when the alpha subunit is activated, it dissociates from the beta and the gamma subunits, and then goes down to activate what is referred to as an enzyme that is called the adenylate cyclase. It is called adenylate cyclase. Adenylate cyclase. When adenylate cyclase is activated, it catalyzes the production of cyclic AMP from what is called ATP. Now, ATP, adenylate cyclase converts, it catalyzes the conversion of ATP to cyclic AMP. Now, cyclic AMP is a second messenger which goes to ion channels. It goes to cation channels. In this case, the cation channel is sodium, calcium channel. Cyclic AMP activates these channels and results in the influx of cation. And the cation, like I mentioned, is the sodium ion and the calcium ion. Now, the influx of sodium ion changes the membrane potential of this receptor, and when the membrane potential of this receptor is changed, it results in the generation of a graded potential that is called receptor potential. It results in the generation of a graded potential called the receptor potential. Now, when the receptor potential reaches a particular threshold, it results in the generation of action potential, which is transmitted along the olfactory nerve. Now, let me also draw another diagram. Now, I'm very sure we are familiar with this diagram. Now, let's say that the resting membrane potential of this receptor is minus 70 millivolts. And when there's an influx of sodium ion, of course, this is known as the threshold potential. This is the resting membrane potential. Now, when there's an influx of sodium ion, it results in a change in the resting membrane potential. That change in the resting membrane potential is known as receptor potential. When the receptor potential reaches a particular threshold, it spikes and results in the generation of what is referred to as an action potential. Action potential. So, action potential will result in the activation of the receptor and will result in the transmission of electrical impulse. Now, the calcium ions are very important in the sense that they bring about the adaptation of this receptor, and they do that by activating calmodulin. Calmodulin has a way of activating an ion channel called cyclic. It is called cyclic nucleotide gated ion channel. Let me write it in full. Cyclic nucleotide gated ion channels. So calcium actually activates calmodulin. It activates calmodulin, which results in the activation of cyclic nucleotide gated ion channels. When the cyclic nucleotide gated ion channels are activated, it results in the adaptation. It results in the adaptation of this receptor. Thank you for listening. I'm sure you enjoyed the lectures. I hope to see you in my next class. Thank you.